Good evening. I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Cunningham Township Board for Monday, February 4th, 2018. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Trustees Brown. Here. Hazen.
Here.
Hersey.
Here.
Jacobson. Miller. Roberts.
Here.
Wu.
Here.
Mayor Marlin.
Here.
And I believe Wayne Williams, the assessor, is on the phone. Wayne, are you there?
Here.
Yep.
I am.
Okay, next up is approval of minutes from the previous meeting of January 14th, 2019. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll make the motion to approve the minutes.
Second?
I'll second.
Any corrections? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. That motion passes. Are there any additions to the agenda? Okay. Public participation. Does anyone wish to address the Cunningham Town Board? I don't have any slips. Okay, seeing none. Committee to verify bills, Town Fund and GA Fund.
Okay, great. Good evening. So for the Town Fund, we had $28,679.30. And in the General Assistance Fund, we had $44,026.64. That's a total of $72,705.94, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Danielle?
No. So I'd like to make a motion that we approve the township funds and the general fund.
I'll second that.
Moved by Dennis, seconded by Dean. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. That motion passes. Reports of officers. Danielle?
So I think, I believe Wayne is on the phone, so I'm going to go ahead and give my report, take any questions, and then I'll pass it to him. So we had 113 general assistance participants. You have a memo in front of you I just passed out. Has a nice new letterhead from Cope Cumston, who is our volunteer graphic designer. Thanks, Cope. That's down 7 participants from last month. So we're basically watching, we're bouncing between 110 and 125 at this point, which is a good sign. 37 participate in community work fair. 3 are on the job search track. We actually had a number of folks receive jobs this last month, so some of the, I would say about 5 of those are from folks who are over income. 60 are disabled seeking social security income. 38 are homeless, and we still have, it's lower than it's been in the past, but it's still sizable. Average age is 48 years old. That stayed pretty steady. For homeless assistance, you might recall that last month we had a record 22 households served. I was wondering if it was going to stay there or bump back down. I assumed it was because of evictions leading up to January, and it appears that that's the case. We had 8 households served, which is pretty standard. 3 homeless households were moved into housing with rental assistance, and 5 households avoided homelessness with eviction prevention assistance. I also want to mention that in November, with the help of housing advocacy interns, we have 2. Cunningham Township began to call through all of our participant households known to be homeless now or within the last 12 months. And we actually help folks apply for housing on the phone. So we walk them through the whole process for subsidized housing, fill out the information, and we're actually listed as a secondary contact because the homeless don't have an address to communicate with Housing Authority or HUD. So essentially we now play that function. February 1st, so we helped 22 households apply, which was fantastic just this last month. The first of our applicants just moved into a place February 1st. We had 4 applicants move in. And I just wanted to share the story of one participant who has been street homeless in Urbana for 2 years. And he receives general assistance. You can't receive general assistance and homeless assistance, right? So you're either one or the other. So he receives general assistance. He needed $375 to move into housing for the first time in 2 years. So we have an angel donor fund. We recently received $500 from Urbana Rotary for the Angel Fund. Thank you, Urbana Rotary. We also received $600 from the the Friends meeting, which is the Quakers in Urbana, and we have a couple of different checks that are pledged, so I expect another about $1,500 to come in from pledges. So from that money, we took $375, helped him get into housing. What he said to me is, "You don't understand. I've been homeless for 2 years and never thought I would get a break. This is a miracle. Thank you so much." So thanks to, partnership with the Housing Authority and also with the Township, we were able, and our donors, we were able to get him into housing. Just for the record, he's a stellar worker. He works at Salt and Light, and he's really looking forward to using that to build his resume and get into a job. So the second piece is poverty data for Urbana. Several months ago, you might recall, and Bill, you had followed up with some information. So I reported on poverty levels in Urbana. This chart's from 2015, and essentially, I reproduced the slide here, showing that Urbana had more than twice the national poverty level. So at that time, the mayor and members of the town board questioned how much the data is skewed by the university student population, which I think is a good question. So I've been working with Alan Axelrod. Alan, would you mind coming up to the public input? So Alan is a PhD student in agricultural and biological engineering. He has worked with our office, how long it's been, Alan? Almost a year?
Maybe.
Yeah,
Think
I think since last spring. And he has been doing statistical analysis for our office. So essentially, I asked Alan to take the same data that I was reporting from, which is also generally accepted data. It's the American Community Survey, and we looked at the 5-year period covered from 2012 to 2016. And I actually put the table number too, so you can look it up yourself. It uses the census definition of poverty. We looked at poverty rates in the US, in Urbana, in Champaign, in Normal, in Bloomington, and in West Lafayette. Right, so these are somewhat comparable local. The data shows that poverty for groups outside of the typical ages for college students is larger than in Urbana than comparable communities. So Urbana residents age 5 and under, Urbana residents under 18, and Urbana residents over 25 years are poorer than Champaign, Normal, Bloomington, and West Lafayette, even though West Lafayette's overall poverty rate is higher by 7 points. So this is what I'm attempting to explain to the town board and to the public. We actually have a poverty problem in Urbana. The data is clear. We're not talking about students aged 18 to 25, and the poverty is significant. So what Alan has done is actually colored in red anytime there was a variation from the national average of 10% or more. In light red, 5 to 10%. In lightest red, 0 to 5%. Then you can get the same from green. So essentially, I think it's important to note that when we're doing policy, it's very important to understand what our data looks like and understand why. Now, interestingly, there's a lot of misconceptions that like crime follows poverty. Not so. We're actually a poorer community than Champaign. We have significantly less crime. I mean, it depends on what you consider significant. But there's less gun violence, there's less crime. So why is that? And it's worth talking about that piece. Also, the sense of people's sense of living, their satisfaction, their community connections, their education. There's other things to look at. Urbana is a fantastic place to live in many ways because we have a coherent community and folks take care of each other. But I think it's really important for us to also own what the stats say, which is that our children are poor, our folks over 25 are poor. Interestingly, our seniors are doing pretty well compared to the national average, as they are doing in all of these communities. I also want to point out, and so often when we talk about poverty and then we want to exclude students, which I understand because students' earning time is compromised, so to speak, by school. So they can't always earn the same wages because they are also going to school. But being a student does not mean you are not in poverty or that you're supported by your parents. I, for one, moved to Urbana with $50 in my pocket, estranged from my parents, and were on food stamps for my first 2 years here. So I'm not a student who, fit that category. So I included, there's been quite a bit in the last 2 years, some reports on student poverty, particularly student hunger. And there's a pretty large-scale report just this last year on students who experience hunger issues. So I also just want to put out there that even though we're, looking outside of 18 to 25 to kind of separate out the student, what is the traditional age for university students, it's also the case that our students can experience poverty and hunger. With that, I wanted to thank Alan for his work and ask if you had anything to add. I have a couple of other notes, but I want to pause here just to give you an opportunity to talk a little bit about these stats, and then I have a couple of other items.
So,
Alan, did you want to add something?
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to say that I had looked at the documents, the data that Bill Brown had sent, and for example, that outlines that there was a 13.1% poverty rate in Champaign County when you removed the all-student population. I was able to find out that the national average for the same year was a 12.7% poverty rate when you exclude the student population. What that means is that the overwhelming poverty rate in Urbana for those ages is offset by all the other communities to the extent that we are only 0.4% above the poverty rate. So that is to say, the poverty statistics in Urbana is significant, is very significant to the county level as well as all by its own self.
Any questions about this? Go ahead.
I wondered if you had a chance to talk with the U of I about any kind of data they have. I'm sure it's protected and everything, but they may have aggregated data on poverty levels among students, because they could probably get that from the FAFSA forms they fill out, although that would probably exclude a lot of international students. As far as the ages go, I think the age range is about right. I know a lot of people live in Orchard Downs that are probably over 25, but I think I agree. We definitely have poverty, and definitely the student population is more poor than people think. There's a lot of people that live in luxury apartments, but there are a lot of people that aren't. And Urbana doesn't have a lot of luxury apartments, so we probably get more than our share of students that don't live in those. But yeah, this is great data. I think it does help shine the light on kind of figuring out that you can't just excuse it by saying, oh yeah, we have a lot of students.
Yeah, and thank you for mentioning Orchard Downs specifically. As treasurer of the Graduate Employees Organization, I'm keenly aware of how many graduate employees are underpaid. The other thing that I want to say is I have met with one faculty from the U of I so far regarding food insecurity data. I am in the process of trying to meet with other professors. The goal is to eventually not just say, here are some statistics that I colored in, but to say, eventually, here's a systemic analysis for different profiles of homelessness. So unfortunately, the data is very difficult to come by, and so that's what I'm spending my volunteer hours doing, is trying to aggregate that data.
Dennis and then Eric.
I guess, I don't know if this relates directly, but is there a correlation between the fact that Urbana has such a large rental population rather than home ownership? Does this also play into the statistics for poverty?
So I take that question to mean, what is the difference in poverty rate between tenants and people that own their homes, and how that might be reflected in Urbana's overrepresentation of rental homes?
Yeah.
I will have to follow up with you on that. I'm very interested in that question as well. The one thing that I wanted to also point out, just on the notion of Urbana's overrepresentation of rental homes, is that even having a normal eviction rate, but with a higher number of rental homes, that actually changes the equation. The eviction rate's calculated with all households in the denominator, not strictly rental households. So when you have an overrepresentation of rental households, that means that it's masking the actual eviction rate in the community. So, but yeah, to answer your question, I will have to follow up on rental household poverty versus homeowner poverty.
Thanks. Thank you.
A related statistic, if it were feasible to get, probably is. Oh, thank you. Related statistic, if it were feasible to get readily, would be home cost of housing. What is the distribution of housing costs? And because probably, as far as city government is concerned, and township government, but city government especially, that's one area where we can that's one area that we can impact with policy. We can't provide income from city treasury for a wide range of poor people, but we can have policies that make affordable housing more likely. So I'd be very interested to know what our housing cost distribution is.
So one thing I'll also follow up, I think it was acknowledged in your comment, was the notion that looking at housing distributions and ideally having a more favorable housing price distribution wouldn't affect the poverty rate in terms of someone's earnings. But yeah, otherwise it is valid for determining the financial well-being of people.
Yeah, it would not affect the poverty rate by terms of in the definitions that the Census Bureau uses, but it would definitely affect the ability of people of low income to make ends meet.
I agree.
So county-wide housing cost distribution information is available in a document that's basically created by HUD for all of the HUD-funded communities. And there's and I can share it with the town board and mayor and the grants management staff. If you've probably already seen it, but essentially that talks through what the state of housing is in detail for Champaign County. It doesn't break it down to urban, Champaign or Urbana, but I think it gives us when it talks about urban housing, it's primarily talking about Champaign Urbana area. So I made a note to share that report with you. Any other questions for Atlin?
Mary Alice?
I think it would be shine a light on all these numbers if we had just what is the actual poverty rate, like how much do you have to earn. I'm assuming you're using the federal government, which is a third of the cost of how much it costs to feed a certain number of people, whatever the household is. I can't remember the number off the top of my head. I think it's around 17,000, if that's correct.
For at least a single household, it was more around, I think, 12, but you can...
12.
Yeah.
I was thinking of a family of 2 or 3.
I
It would
don't
just
have
be
that one
helpful if we
memorized.
had, a family of a single household
Right.
and then 2 and then 3. I think that then you could see if you have people in poverty, their poverty means $12,000 a year.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
This is the census definition, and we went back and forth because it's a large table, depending on, how
Sure,
many
sure.
folks. But I
Yeah.
can share that digitally. When I share the supervisor's memo, I can share it where the poverty definition, and it's stated in my memo that that's the definition we're using.
and the
I'm
census...
assuming that you're using the one from the Agriculture Department, which is what the United States government uses. That's the definition, yeah?
We were actually using the tables listed on the Census Bureau website because that's what they're using for the American Community Survey.
Yeah, I think that's it based in the Agriculture Department.
Okay.
So are these household poverty levels or individual poverty levels in this table?
My understanding is that they are population poverty levels. The reason is because what we don't show here is the count data that is also in the census table for these same numbers. So they would have the population that is reflected at count data, and then they would have the percentage right next to it in the adjacent column.
So it's counting people, not households.
Individuals.
Individual people. Yep. Eric had a question.
Do we have an idea of the trend lines? Are things getting I mean, you know, obviously, the numbers that we're looking at are cause for concern, but are they worse than or not as bad as previous periods?
I can follow up with that. I do remember there not being a consistent trend when I had looked at data last year. I am still aggregating this manually. The goal will be to automate that process so that we'd be able to populate data in a more comprehensive fashion.
Yeah, let's definitely look at trend data.
And is this based on the 2010 census, or what year are you looking at?
So the Census Bureau will take statistical estimates rather than a comprehensive estimate in every year between the 10-year census. So this is the 2012 to 2016 5-year American Community Survey estimates.
Okay.
So if there aren't other questions, and certainly if you have other questions, because Alan's working on this over a long time frame, and I'm happy to provide additional data. I think it's really important we have data-driven policies, both for the township and the city, and happy to help provide that. Just to finish out the report, I wanted to also share some data. I sent around maps of our general assistance participants. I haven't given a pinpoint. It's basically a block to protect privacy. But you can see the larger the dot is, the more the folks. And the large dot is actually township, because that's the address that a homeless residents are registered at. So you can kind of ignore that big dot in the middle. But that is homeless. And then the other dots essentially refer to different folks. So the larger dots might be a couple, 3, 4 folks. And then the single dots are one person. What's so interesting about this is that it's really fairly distributed across the community. So what you would think, where poverty is concentrated in certain areas, and certainly our census data shows that there are certain blocks or census tracts where there's more poverty. In terms of who's accessing GA, it's really across the map. A few places there are not folks, at least of this snapshot. This was beginning of December when we did the snapshot, and then we've been kind of crunching data and making this map. I have another person who is learning GIS and using this as a project to do some GIS mapping. So around Crystal Lake, pretty much from Lincoln Avenue to Broadway Avenue down to University, there's no one at that snapshot who is on GA. East of Orchard Downs, in the kind of that Suna, west part of Suna, and then Stone Creek. But really any other part, if there's not dots, it's probably because it's, Scottswood, or it's a park, or it's out of the community. So West Urbana, East Urbana, North Urbana, South Urbana. I think we sometimes have this idea that poverty is concentrated in far East Urbana and North Urbana, but at least for the general assistance participants, that's not playing out on this map. The second, I have one other announcement, and then the others will be related to resolutions. The township recently helped to support a National Science Foundation grant application by the iSchool and the Civil Design Center and Computer Science Department. What we are hoping to do is to get 3 data scientists for 3 years to actually do significant data analysis on the homeless population in Champaign County, to work alongside an initiative to look at how we can develop a data-driven model to end homelessness in our community. So this group would basically accompany the policymakers, that would be you, and others at the table to look at how we can develop programs that use existing resources as much as we can to address the homeless population. So I'm very excited about that. It's not a done deal. The grant went in, I think it's being submitted on the 6th in 2 days, but our portion was due last week, and I'm really excited and hopeful that we can partner with the university in this way. With that, unless you have any questions for me, I can pass it on to Wayne. Dennis?
Yeah, I didn't catch Alan's last name.
Axelrod.
Axelrod, okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Great. Wayne, are you still on the phone?
I am, and William should be there to give the report. I can answer any questions after.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Okay.
Okay, can everybody hear me clearly?
Yes.
All right. Well, I'm William Harris. I'm the new Deputy Chief Assessor for Cunningham Township. Thank you for allowing me to come here. First thing from Georgia. It's a little cold up here. The first thing I actually want to start with are some things that we're trying to get done, accomplished now. And I know at the last meeting y'all spoke a lot about these senior exemptions, status forms, and the freezes that were going out. So what we did was that following week, we sent them out. And we got a large return of them back already. We've answered a lot of phone calls. We had a lot of traffic coming into the office. We plan maybe the second half of the year to send out a second round just to catch anybody who probably didn't check the mail or they forgot to turn it back in. Try to give the seniors another chance to get their exemptions in. This week, we're spending a lot of time actually going out, verifying some characteristics since we got a break in the weather. Because there were a lot of properties that we didn't have the correct characteristics and data on. So we're trying to get those corrected because, of course, that's revenue for the digest, of course, revenue for the county. Going into the end of 2019, one of the major projects we're doing is coming from DeKalb into Cunningham. You use a lot of paper for data. Like you store a lot of paper, so it also causes problems if water leaks happen, records are now damaged, so those are things that we can't get back. So the staff and the interns, we're all working together to, by the end of 2019, to have all your property record cards actually digitized. So if anyone wants to call in and get some information, we can have it at our fingertips versus spending 10 to 15 minutes looking for it. I actually say it's pretty challenging because I come from a place where it was already at my fingertips, but I'm not actually unfamiliar to it because in 2011, the CAB went through the same process. So we spent a lot of time, a lot of man hours actually scanning these cards, and the interns have actually been a pivotal thing in helping with that because with the senior exemptions now coming in, we're getting a lot more traffic. So you can't spend a lot of time at the computer because there are a lot of people that actually need help filling out these forms to make sure they're getting the exemptions they actually deserve. Another big thing is by the end of 2020, we actually plan to go completely digital and retire your paper property record cards. We're going to archive them because the law says we're to keep them. So we're going to archive them in the basement of the building, but we would like to have it to where if anyone calls in, anyone in this office could go to the computer and within a matter of seconds say, here's your property record card, here's the history of your values, everything is at your fingertips. So we're working real diligent towards that. Any questions you guys have, we're working hard for you. Yes, ma'am.
I was just wondering if you were planning on making that available online or if they needed to come to your office.
No, we actually will have parts of it online. We're still working with the software engineers to see, I guess, which parts will work and which parts won't. So it's going to be a little bit of a testing phase at the end of the year. That's why we're kind of waiting until the end of 2020 to completely roll it out.
All right, and thank you and welcome.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Eric?
Are you already or are you already backing up somewhere off-site the stuff that you're getting digital, or is it early to worry about that?
Well, it's kind of still early because, excuse me, we've probably been highly focused on it for maybe like the last 2 weeks I've been here. First thing was just trying to get, I guess, some organization to figure out the direction we were going to go. But actually, to that point, I think maybe I'll say June and July, I'll look more towards the backing up of the data for you.
You have my sympathy. When my wife became recorder of deeds, she was the one who moved all our property records from paper to digital, and it was a big job. So thank you for undertaking it.
Oh, no problem. I'm happy.
My question is, because I think my mother got this information in the mail, homesteading. It was like homesteading and senior exemption or something, two different pieces of paper. One of them, both of them said that they're not really due until the end of 2019. So is there, I think, so do the seniors know that how that deadline works, or have you done any follow-up with that? Is there something because I read for her, so.
Okay. No, we actually have a lot of seniors or their children, spouses calling in asking those questions like, oh, it says it's due at the end of 2019. But the reason we're sending them out early enough is because people have busy lives, things catch up with them. So we're giving more opportunity to say, hey, these are things you qualify. They belong to you. So please get them in. We're sending them out early enough that if they don't catch that deadline now, well, not the deadline, but if they don't get it into us in this first wave, that give us the opportunity, instead of us sending out 11,000 each time, now I can say, okay, there are only 4,000 people who didn't respond. So let's send those 4,000 out. And now we'll spend more time being more aggressive, getting out there. I'll be honest with you. Me and the staff had a conversation last week. If we had to, where I'm from, for seniors, we kind of go knock on the doors and, hey, you still here? How can we help you? Because there are some people who may got to that age where, they can't fill out the forms, or they can't actually make it to our office, or they can't make those phone calls. For those people, we're trying to make a way.
Yeah, because what I noticed, or one of them, she can't even fill out right now because you have to have
The
your
green
taxes
form.
done. You got to do your taxes
Yeah,
first. And
I'm sorry.
no, and so I was wondering. That's why I was wondering about if everyone, how you were going to follow up with that, because through no fault of hers, she just didn't start getting tax forms until like yesterday. So I was wondering, I was hoping that you'd be able to follow up on other seniors that are also having that issue.
Oh, yeah. We're actually getting a lot of calls about the green form because, if I'm correct, last year it was blue. So it's kind of throwing people off with the color change.
Yeah, that's
But as
another
they're
thing.
calling in, we're actually letting them know, because we're getting a lot of the white one, which is the status forms returned. And they're coming in with the green one in their hands. And we're telling them, it's not that it's due now, but I want to give you ample amount of time for you to sit down with your CPAs or sit down with your spouses to see if you qualify for these exemptions. Because when Wayne, and I want to believe it was Mark, ran it, they found like tons of seniors who had exemptions that they never knew or they never applied for. So now, because we're in February and I don't actually need it till December, that's 10 months for all kinds of conversations, all kind of help that can be given.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Any other questions? Thanks, William.
Thank you.
Any unfinished business? No? Nope. Okay, we have some new business to take care of. T, resolution number 2019-02-002R, which is a resolution regarding the release of closed season minutes. Charlie.
This is the usual every 6-month resolution for the town board. There's one set of minutes to be released, the minutes of the last review.
Is there a motion?
I'll move approval of resolution number 2019-02-002R.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Moved by Bill, seconded by Dean. Further discussion? Does this need a roll call? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. That motion passes. Next is T, resolution number 2019-02-003R, resolution authorizing the Cunningham Township to sign a depository pledge agreement with the Illinois funds.
So, easy enough, we're trying to always maximize our investments, and this gives us the flexibility of moving some money into the Illinois fund, which right now has a greater return on investment than what we're seeing in our current fund. We'll continue to have savings in Busey and checking, and I'll also be reaching out to them to see if they can do better on our savings account. But I'd like to be able to move some funds into the Illinois fund to realize additional income. We're actually at about, I think you saw in our financial report, at about 125% of what we thought we were going to get in interest. So I'd like to see that be 200%, 250 by the end of the year. We'll take the money wherever we can get it. So,
What's the Illinois fund paying?
I believe the last I checked was 2.1%, which is paltry, but it's better than some other places that are tied to bonds.
Okay, is there a motion? Mary Alice.
I'll move approval for T resolution number 2019-02-003R, resolution authorizing the Cunningham Township to sign depository pledge agreement with Illinois funds.
I'll second.
Moved by Mary Alice, second by Bill. Further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. That ordinance, or that resolution passes. And the last is Resolution 2019-02-004R, which is a resolution authorizing Cunningham Township Supervisor to pay funds to Rosecrans for Consolidated Social Service Fund Agreement for Men's Transitional Housing.
So briefly, the situation is that there's three things you should know as background. So when Rosecrans kind of took over from Community Elements, they also took over several programs that Community Elements had. One was Roundhouse Homeless Shelter for Youth. We right now have no homeless shelter for youth in our community, other than if you're 6 or under, you can go to Crisis Nursery. That was closed, and they only received a portion of payment. Then there was Time Center, Men's Transitional Emergency Shelter. The last communication I received, so we had budgeted $10,000. That's what they had been awarded, so to speak, by the town board. We did distribute the first 2 quarters of payments. This is all last fiscal year, so we're talking quarter 1 and quarter 2 of last fiscal year. Then there was no formal communication about their status. I was told by the outgoing president of Community Elements that Times was likely to close. I couldn't get additional information. I held payments. At that time, I did not think that I received quarter 3 and quarter 4 requests. We reached out at the end of the year and said, I did find out that Times remained open, although at much lesser capacity in its 4th quarter, and then they closed exactly at the end of the fiscal year. So I had not received requests for payment. We had asked people to get their payments in and sent final emails in June. And then last month in December, I was asked where are the payments for the Time Center. And so I spoke with our attorney, I spoke with our auditor, and I'm bringing to you, basically, as far as I can tell, it's your discretion about whether or not we should make payments to Rosecrans for Time Center. So I wanted to give you the information. One, they didn't really communicate, even though we were a funder, and I was told they were closing, but the fact was they did not close. They were open until the end of the year. Second, I believed that they had not requested payment. They had requested payment to an old email. There was a Gmail account of my former office administrator. I was able to find those and to confirm that the first payment was requested within the fiscal year. The second payment was requested by July 17th outside of the fiscal year. So they were late in their second request. They were not the only ones late. There were a number of people who received payments who requested in July. So for parity, there were several who were late. Therefore, I am requesting, if you believe that we should make payment to Time Center for that time, then I would need town board approval, because last time I checked, it's February 4th, and this was for the last fiscal year. So I bring this to you because it's your call. My recommendation, because we did receive requests in a timely manner, and they were open until the end of the year, although at limited capacity, is that we should go ahead and make payment. I will have a second request next month for Prairie Center that was subsumed by Rosecrans, where they're also requesting payment. That's a different situation, and I will probably have a different recommendation. But in this case, that's what we're just looking at the Time Center, Men's Transitional Emergency Shelter, and disbursement of payments.
Is there a motion, and then we'll have discussion? Or, I guess, yeah.
Well, I'll move adoption of this just to put it on the floor.
Okay.
So I'll second.
Okay. Discussion. Dennis?
Well, so I guess one option would be to pay the first, which was a timely request, even though it went to the wrong email, and to not pay the second one. I don't know what you think about that, since there are 2 payments that are being requested.
That's up to you. The only information is that there are folks who requested payment. There are groups that requested payment around the same time as the fourth quarter payment. So the issue could be one of parity in that case.
Oh, yeah, you said that.
Yeah. Just for the record, Sheila Dodd, who's the new Community Development Manager of Grants, and I have been meeting, and we will be much clearer and stricter about, groups getting things in on a timely basis when we present to them next month. So hopefully we won't have this problem.
What amounts are we talking about? Do you have that for
What's
us?
that?
What amount are we talking about as far as the payment itself?
Oh, the payment is $5,000. It's 2 quarterly payments of $2,500 each.
Oh, so it's not going to break us to do
Oh,
this?
no, it was budgeted. But, all money is green, as Cliff Singer used to say, so you can spend it on something else if you don't spend it here.
Bill?
I might have missed it. Did you say there were any performance measures, or was it just they had to stay open as far as meeting the requirements of the grant?
This is another problem with our program, which I've raised, which is that essentially all they have to do is that they send a very bare minimum report of how many folks they served and how many Urbana residents they served. And they did send that report, and it was, in quarter 3, it was similar to the other quarters, and in quarter 4, it was less, but that's to be expected as they were trying to taper and transition folks out of times. But it's not like they were serving 0. Although Roundhouse, they were serving almost no one. And, we were going to talk, and then they came to us and said, we're not serving anyone, so we're going to close. Not that there weren't homeless youth to serve, just for the record.
Sharice?
So I'm trying to understand, is Rosecrans, because you said they officially closed, are they open now, or are they housed
so-
someplace else, or what?
Rosecrans has a number of programs, and the men's emergency shelter that was at times, they closed, and they've rented times to see you at home. So you see you at home in partnership with the CU Men's Emergency Shelter is now operating a warming center and shelter at that location, but it's not run by it's not run by Rosecrans, it's run by their renters. So essentially, for the public, the reason I put it that way is for those who are listening, if you want to know whether or not there's a men's shelter and a warming center, at times there is. I want
Okay.
folks to know that. But Rosecrans is not running it, so they no longer run that program. And they're not being funded in this fiscal year for any program in Champaign or Urbana through the Consolidated Social Services Grant.
Oh, okay, so, I'm sorry, just a minute. So Rosecrans isn't running any programs, but the money will be sent to Rosecrans for last year's, okay, and what programs will that go to with Rosecrans?
It'll basically it'll reimburse them for the funds that they expended on that program.
Okay, so this is like a reimbursement thingy,
so
okay,
to speak, yeah.
For while they were running the program, before they stopped.
right, okay.
Eric?
So as long as we are, not going to run afoul of violating contractual agreement, I'm sort of leaning towards Dennis's thought of providing them with a partial reimbursement, perhaps the $2,500, because they did remain open, but they didn't really remain open at the level that we expected. And therefore, they did not incur the level of expense that we expected when we agreed to make the grant. So I think to me, it would be just to provide the $2,500 as opposed to the $5,000, unless there's some other aspect of this that's not clear to me at this moment.
Fred, did you want to speak to the legal issue? Because my understanding is they asked for it out of the contract, and it's no breach of contract for us not to pay. So just the legal question, is that correct?
I believe Danielle's explanation is completely correct, and her explanation of your choices, I believe, is also correct. It's your discretion, and I think you have, as I see it, three choices. One is to do nothing. One is to do as has just been suggested and give them one payment, and the other is to give them both payments. So I think it's entirely up to you, and I don't see that you're violating anything by whatever choice you make.
Thanks, Fred.
Eric?
I would then like to propose an amendment to the motion, and it would be in the last paragraph where we would, all of the language in that paragraph would be correct down to the third line, and in the third line I would suggest to make payment for quarter 3 totaling $2,500.
I'll
Or-
second that.
Yeah, okay. Actually, let me make it, let me clean that up a little bit. To make partial payment for quarters 3 and 4 totaling $2,500. Yes.
Could I speak to that? I think it would be cleaner to simply say you're making quarter 3 payment.
Okay.
Because quarter 4 payment, and my resolution, I noticed, it says July 13th. It's actually July 17th. I checked today.
Okay.
So I think you're on better footing to, if you're going to deny quarter 4 payment, you'd basically deny it because it's outside of the window, whereas quarter 3 was submitted in time.
I back up to my original wording.
Okay.
So your resolution states that it authorizes Daniel Chenoweth as Cunningham Township Supervisor to make a payment for quarter 3 totaling $2,500.
I think Mary Alice was on board.
I did second that,
Okay.
yes.
So all those in favor of that amended language, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Okay, and then we'll go back to the original motion. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Okay, that motion passes as amended. Bill?
I just noticed there might be an editorial correction to make on that previous resolution. It still has Busey Bank in there on the second line from the bottom. Should that be changed to State of Illinois funds?
Or we're back to the other resolution.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, where are you
This is
looking, Bill?
the resolution on the Illinois funds.
Mhm.
Our copy on the second line from the bottom says depository pledge agreement with Busey
Oh.
Bank.
Correct. That's
Good.
So
that's
do
a
we need
mistake.
to re-vote on that, or is that just an editorial correction?
Good. It says Busey Bank here. It should say Illinois Fund. We used an old resolution. And so,
No, I think that should be corrected. I think they came up with a motion now to correct.
okay.
Okay, so I'll move to correct the resolution by replacing Busey Bank with the words State of Illinois, and then in parentheses, Illinois funds.
Is there a second?
Yes, I do that.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. That motion passes. Thanks for
Thank
catching
you so much
that.
for catching that, Bill.
All right, with no further business before the town board, this meeting is adjourned.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.